Hello. I think you're going to find this interview extremely interesting. Lucy Chamberlain started a business 10 years ago. She was in quite a vulnerable situation psychologically at that moment, but yet she chose to set the business up right from the off with a very clear set of principles that she's followed through and expanded on over 10 years and has developed tremendous amount of really positive impact for thousands of women who've been in difficult situations trying to get back into work after a career break. She has also embarked on a personal journey of learning. And so she's taken multiple coaching courses, and that comes through very strongly in the interview. And she firmly believes, as I do, that actually coaching as a skill is very important for leaders of any business, and should be a key tool in managing staff. But she also is very willing and very open to taking sometimes negative feedback. Her strapline, I really liked it. Don't get furious, get curious. Dive deeper into what the motivation for the complaint is, and look for what you can learn from that and how you can grow by taking that on board. She talks a lot about that challenge that we all have as business leaders, about those difficult conversations. How do you do it? How do you store the energy for it? There's lots to unpack in that section of the interview. It's really interesting. And finally, when we talk about reflecting back over the 10 years and what tips would she have, this idea of creating a village around you, a support mechanism. I loved that. I thought that was really lovely. And being really honest with yourself, as she said, lift the bonnet on yourself before you get too far down the track of the business. So in many, many ways, quite profound insights that you'll really appreciate, I think, and well worth a listen. So I commend this interview. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to my Stressing Values podcast. I'm glad you could join me again, where we meet entrepreneurs who are running their business with a very strict set of values. So I'm delighted today to meet Lucy Chamberlain from C&C Search, who I'm sure you are going to find very interesting. So Lucy, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be great. But for listeners that won't know anything about C&C Search, perhaps you could just introduce yourself and how you got what C&C Search does and how you started it and why you're doing it.
Absolutely. Well, after I graduated, I fell into a career in recruitment, and that was, 26 years ago now. And 10 years ago, I decided to embark on a new journey for me and started C&C Search, which was really founded with, I think, a sense that we were going to be able to create a values-led search and recruitment company. We were going to really focus on legacy and partnership at the core of everything that we did. And so 10 years later, we have probably placed many thousands of candidates into rewarding careers, and alongside that have been able to train many thousands of women that have experienced career breaks or have had periods of unemployment due to ill health, mental health reasons, or indeed caring responsibilities as part of our legacy alongside our purpose, which is to place incredible people with incredible organizations with big ambitions.
Whoa. So what was you mentioned there that you've been in this sector for 26 years or so, but you started this in 10 years ago. So what was the sort of trigger to step into the world of running your own business?
Yeah, I think like lots of entrepreneurs, I had a sense of frustration with where I was at that time in my life, probably personally and professionally.
Okay.
I really realized that there was an opportunity to do things differently, both from an internal perspective in terms of how you co-collaborate and co-create a business with your team, but also from an external perspective in terms of how you do business. And that voice became louder at the same time as I was experiencing that sense that there was a different route for me. I went through lots of personal change. So I went through a divorce. I walked out of a marriage and I had an 18-month-old that I was solely responsible for. I had a health scare at that time. And I think that all of those things, I guess they all crashed into each other at the same time. And I felt very stuck. And probably in some areas of my life, I felt a bit powerless. But I think my career is somewhere where I've always felt quite powerful.
So that's a sort of anchor for you. You could go there.
Absolutely. And so I think that for me, that choice to start the business came because I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired with the status quo.
Right.
And I knew I had a lot of passion and drive in me that I wanted to funnel that energy in a really positive direction.
Yeah, and you chose right from the off, despite being quite vulnerable at this point. So you must have been, it's quite challenging setting up a business for everybody, but you've got all this stuff going on in your personal life as well before you can get started. But you started with a really clearly, from what I understand, sort of is it right to say women first, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, I suppose yes, women first. I've always absolutely loved working with women. And for me, I had always worked in environments up until the point I started CNC, where the teams were predominantly women, but the people at the top were predominantly men. And there is for me, there was an interesting opportunity to create a business where top down, bottom up, it was female founded and female led, and that the succession planning was going to come from women as well, and in an environment where we were going to create a genuine meritocracy, where we were all going to be able to shape decision making and share in any wealth that was generated. And the thing about women, and not all women, but the thing about the women when you share values is that there's a genuine desire to collaborate, and there's a genuine sense of collaboration over competition that I hear from very male dominated environments, from colleagues that I network with, that often that sense of competition is far greater when you have a team that's dominant with men rather than a team of women. And it's about time too. We're a gazillion years off equality, as we all know, according to the very depressing data from the United Nations. So but I can create my own world, and I had an opportunity to create my own world, and so this is what I chose to do with it.
Well, I think that's the joy of business, isn't it? You're the entrepreneur. You set it out. You set it out to your rules. You can do. That's what I've always loved about running my own business. It's I can do it, well, provided I get paid and I can find enough customers. I can do it my way.
Yes.
You also mentioned the word legacy. I thought that was really interesting. So what did you mean by that?
I think for me, having a sense of purpose wasn't found in creating profit. And I think that success means different things to different people. And for me, I couldn't have weathered all of the storms that come with building a business if I didn't have a greater sense of purpose. And when you are in an industry like ours, which is a very people-centric business, you have an opportunity at every single touch point to create some form of legacy. But I wanted it to be beyond that. And I think that as I started learning and developing and growing myself, and I love to learn, I took on more and more coaching qualifications. And I think it's probably one of the best things anybody could do for their own personal relationships, the relationship with themselves and others, is to explore coaching. I think all leaders should be coaches to some greater or lesser degree. And as I did that, I realized that I had a talent for public speaking. And
Oh,
that involved
okay.
a lot of me getting out of my own way. But part of that public speaking and became then an opportunity to help others unlock their potential. And so when I looked at legacy, it was going to be, I didn't want to do anything performative. I didn't want to plant a tree for every placement, or I didn't want those things where you are completely separated from the little bit of good you're then doing. I wanted it, I wanted it to mean something, and I wanted it to be effort led. And I think through the training and development opportunities that we've been able to
Yes.
provide, that's where my purpose has been most profound in terms of its realization. And we've trained thousands and thousands of women now through the academy, which is a separate
That's
part of
extraordinary.
CNC Search. And that's been phenomenally rewarding.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a great fan of linking what you actually do for a living with the thing that you do in terms of mission. And I think that's just music to my ears. I do hear a lot of people doing things that are really quite external to and outside of what they do for a living, and doesn't seem connected. Your delivery. So tell us about the academy. How does that work?
Yeah, so I think that I think often for a lot of us, doesn't it, our pain becomes our purpose, or can feed into our purpose. And the academy was born out of wanting to realize the potential of the candidates that we work in, wanting to be able to deliver a stronger sense of partnership with our clients, and then to have this wonderful aspect where we would train and develop women that had either experienced redundancy, career gaps, or had a gap in their CV for any reason, which obviously affects women far more than it affects men.
Yes.
Because caring responsibilities
That's
tend
right.
to fall to women. So the academy's grown over the last 6 years. I think we've just had our 10,000th student, and but it's been an incredible gift for me on a personal level, developmentally. And I think for me, whatever happens with the business, I absolutely know that those footprints in the sand that the business has left behind have been felt by many in for some in genuinely, what I'm told, in a life transforming way.
Yes.
And that sometimes it's easy to get lost in the things that aren't as you would like them. But if you can come home to things like that, and for me, that means that the business has always been a success. Yes. Even in the most challenging of times.
Yes, because if you can generate enough surplus so that you can actually do that's extremely positive. Oh, I'm really delighted to hear that. So that classic question, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? I'm imagining your answer is going to be quite different to some of the more sort of commercially driven clients I might have. What would you say to that? Where do you want to be?
I think we have. I think I do know that. Of what I wasn't able to embrace at the beginning of the business was the understanding that creating profit also creates opportunity to do more and to do better and to do good. And I think that having been through our B Corp certification journey and more recently a W Corp certification journey, what I'm realizing is that if we are able to create a business where I have an amazingly stable team, incredible team of women, incredible team of leaders. And ultimately, what I know now is that in 5 years' time, I want every single woman that's been part of the journey to be able to have financial freedom, because we know that when women have financial freedom, they tend to put a lot more of that back into society.
Yes.
And so I want to have co-created a business with this team where there has been wealth that's been created that everybody is sharing in. And what, of course, I want to have continued all of the incredible work that we're doing. Yeah. But I think what we all do know very clearly, having just witnessed the last 5 years, is that nothing is guaranteed, nothing's certain. No. That you, with the best laid plans, you know, you can suddenly see a pandemic happening or a war in Europe happening, and
Yeah.
so I think having a clear vision is critical, but also having massive amounts of elasticity around that vision is
Yes.
going to is going to serve you better in the world that we now live in, I
You've got a
think.
better bend with the wind, haven't you, a little bit?
Yes,
Because there's some
absolutely.
ferocious winds. Absolutely. So a lot about actually deepening the business, about bringing more of the value to all of the people you work with, and obviously making it sure it's sustainable and resilient through whatever turbulence is still to
Yeah.
come. Fantastic. I love that. Um, so you mentioned B Corp, that's very close to your heart, but you also mentioned W Corp. Can
Yeah.
you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, so I think probably most people will know what B Corp is, and I have to say it's probably one of the toughest processes I've been through in terms of
Really?
building the business. It's forensic. It's a solid 2 year investigative growth led process. So everything that you do is investigated, every single policy, every single procedure, every single process. And then you're encouraged to obviously develop a far better way of working that benefits people and planet. And it was incredible, but very, very challenging process. And
Wow.
then W Corp is a new certification that basically says that you are a safe place, which I know should be a baseline, but we can see from many organisations that actually being safe in the workplace isn't something that women have been able to take for granted,
No.
and that you're a safe organisation to place your career into the hands of, and somewhere where you are going to thrive, and an environment that is built for you, because obviously traditional working patterns and structures and were set up for and by men.
Yeah.
And that's been an amazing process because, of course, being all female, being a female leadership team, my assumption was that there wouldn't be a box that we didn't already tick, but actually there were areas where we could still improve, and that
Oh, really?
for me was exciting. I think I'm like most entrepreneurial brains, I love creativity, I love improvement, I love evolution. I believe that there's a million different iterations of ourselves as businesses, as human beings.
Okay.
And when we know better, we can do better. And so I love any opportunity which we can grab onto to help,
Can you
yeah, to
give
help
our
us do
listeners
better
an
in the world.
example of the something that was a revelation to you
Yeah,
in the W
so
call?
we've never we've never had a complaint in the business, for example.
Okay.
And however, what we didn't have set up, so if you have incredibly psychologically safe environments, you have really strong methods by which people can share any particular interaction that they found challenging, or something that they believe needs improving, or something they disagree with. And
Mm.
we obviously have leaders that line manage, but actually that might not necessarily be the safe place where somebody could go with one of those challenges, Chris. So how do you make sure you set up within your infrastructure a place
Yes.
where people can
Yes.
go, where they feel absolutely safe to do so, where they know that will be welcomed and listened
Yeah.
to, rather than criticized or brushed aside in any way.
Yes.
And
That's
so
very
it
different
was,
from a complaint. That's that's
yes.
that's feedback into the system.
Exactly. And some of that feedback may not be the feedback you're looking for at that time, but that
No.
doesn't matter. So for me, setting up those kind of structures and making sure people are aware of them, and that they will always be safe to have a
Mm.
conversation that needs to be had at CNC. Those sorts of things really important. And then the obvious stuff like women experience menstrual cycles,
Yeah.
they go through
Yeah.
menopause, they making sure that you have the right setup and infrastructure that can support those needs that men don't have. So
Yeah. And
it's
are oblivious to most of the time.
well, yeah, yes. I think unless you choose to be aware of, then yeah, probably most of the men that I know don't want to have those conversations, if I'm really honest. So yeah, so that those kind of things, and and we were at the forefront of that. I think we were the third certified company in the UK. So that being part of those initiatives lights me up, and I'm really lucky. I have people in the business. One particular director, Elspeth, who is all equally as excited about those sorts of projects as me. So we get to be involved in those together, which is really lovely.
So how do you? Because this is a very common problem for all business leaders. How do you deal with negative feedback?
Yeah, I think now I look for what's useful.
Okay.
I mean, feedback, generally speaking, will say a lot more about the person delivering that feedback than it does about the feedback itself. And not all feedback is useful. But the majority of feedback, you will, if you are curious about the feedback and if you are able to ask great questions and recognize your own reaction to the feedback. So for me, I think it's about your ability to self-regulate and to open up your mind and your heart to the fact that feedback can be rocket fuel. And the only way we improve is not through praise and accolade. It is actually through the opportunity to do better. And the only way you do that is if you can welcome in feedback. And for me, it's trying to find 2 or 3 things in that feedback, even if I'm finding the feedback challenging or I don't necessarily agree with a piece of feedback. There will always be something useful in it if I look for it.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, I think I had a particularly challenging candidate who felt that a process hadn't been handled the way that they would have liked it to have been. And I felt very much that it had been. And actually, I felt that we'd gone above and beyond, including sort of meetings on Saturday afternoon, etc. So my initial response, I felt I could feel that sense of fight, flight, freeze coming up. How very dare you? We've gone above and beyond. I didn't verbalize that, but that I could feel it in my body. And I think so. For me, it's just in those moments. It's saying, okay, instead of getting furious, get curious. Where's the opportunity for learning here? And actually, I did see opportunities for learning the more curious questions I asked. And I think we would all do so much better if at school we were taught how to have difficult conversations, how to accept difficult feedback, how to deliver feedback. Most of us avoid delivering feedback like the plague because we don't want to upset somebody. And I think honest relationships are built from a foundation of trust, and there is no trust if you can't also have the difficult conversations safely. So I think knowing that and noticing my reaction when things come up has helped me enormously be able to embrace more challenging conversations and know that they aren't fatal, that you can, if handled well, build better relationships as a result of those difficult conversations.
And how long did it take you to acquire that skill? Because that is something that I think all owners really are challenged by. How do you have those difficult conversations?
Oh God, I mean, I'm an imperfect student, so I mean, I still find that challenging, especially as very much a recovering people pleaser. So I think I think knowing that the only way through is through, and knowing that if you do not have the conversation that needs to be had, it will become a very difficult conversation in a very short period of time. Yeah, of course it does. And also the energetically, you store energy when there's a conversation that needs to be had for that conversation. So why not free that up and allow other things in? And the only way to do that, I think, is to speak your truth and let somebody else do exactly the same thing, so that you can then together find a win-win and find a way through.
You move on. Yes, I found when I haven't had those, I've stored it up and it's actually just come out as anger, really.
Yes.
And I always think I should have done that a lot earlier before I got so angry myself.
Yeah. Resentment, frustration, anger, that's where it
goes, isn't it? It ends up at that place. Yes. So I'm guessing you're very committed. You're supporting all of your staff. You've got these very strong values. I'm imagining that you work quite long hours.
Yes. Yeah. And I think at the beginning, I think that's what it takes. I think at the beginning it is what it takes. If you, I don't know anybody, apart from sometimes what you see on Instagram, there's some sort of panacea where you can build a business that doesn't require a level
Apparently,
of,
yes, that is possible.
yeah, I don't know anyone that's done it,
No,
genuinely.
I've never
So
met this person either.
no, thank you. I think that's because I think it's sort of a euphemism that's really unhelpful actually.
Yeah.
But I think that work is, it's interesting in many times in my life when I have felt out of control. The way that I feel more in control is to work more. So that could be brilliant, and that can also be detrimental to my my health and well-being, to the needs of my family. And I think I am learning, and definitely as I hurtle towards 50, that if that part of my way of working needs attention,
Right.
because there's nothing wrong with working hard, and I will always work hard. I'm passionate about what I do, but I think recognizing your own needs in that is absolutely crucial, and not abandoning those, because without our health we truly don't have anything,
There's
that you
literally
can.
nothing left.
No,
Yeah. But
there's
working hard
nothing.
and working long isn't the same thing, is it?
No, it isn't, and it's also recognizing when it's a coping mechanism. And
Mm.
for me, I will often, or certainly when I was younger, I found a lot of my own validation in my output. The more I
Okay.
was working, the more I was doing, the more validated I feel. And of course, that's an self-esteem issue, because ultimately, if you're seeking external validation
Yeah.
to let you know you're okay, then ultimately that you are lacking in self-esteem. So
Yes.
I think recognizing the marriage of internal validation and external validation, and making sure that a lot of that is coming from esteemable acts, is you can only you have to notice what matters to you that's external to work.
Yes, I think that's probably the most important thing, because then that comes up higher
Yes,
relative to work, so
yes.
draws you across to it. If you don't have that magnetic pull, you probably default to work more than you should.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, yeah, I think balance is a misnomer. I think we are, we live in this world where everything sort of blends to some greater or lesser degree. But I think it is about finding what's important to you and making sure that you prioritize and create time for that. Because
Yeah.
if you're doing what gets you to okay, then everything else will be better. And for me, it's reminding myself of that. If I'm not doing what gets me to okay, then nothing I do will be as good as it could be. And if I
Oh,
look
that's
at it that
interesting.
way
Yeah.
around, it helps a
Mm,
lot.
yes. So when you're doing these long hours, are you doing things that you could delegate, you could or should delegate to somebody else?
That sounds like a coaching conversation, Colin.
Funny
Uh,
that.
I am a classic owner manager. So, of course, I spend lots of time doing things that I absolutely could delegate. So, I think that again is part of my own learning journey. And I am so much better than I was, but I
Yeah.
have so much further to go. And I'll get
What's
there.
the barrier, do you think? Because I hear lots of different barriers, but what's your barrier? Why don't you do it?
Oh, well, I mean, the classic, which is these are all sort of self-sabotaging ultimately, is it's better if it's done by me. And of course,
Mm.
that's absolutely not the case. The second, I think ultimately, often I don't want, I will think it's quicker and easier.
Yes,
And at
yes,
times, I don't want to ask the question. And of course, that goes back to that people pleasing thing,
yes,
and boundaries, and having the difficult conversations. So I think it's probably a heady mix of lots of things. But of course, like most of our actions, they are habit formed. And so they happen because we actually don't consciously think about what we're doing. And
yeah,
so the more conscious we get about our time and how it's spent, and what's important to us, and what other
yes,
people, what you're employing other people to do, then the easier it becomes to delegate, I think.
yes. And you form a new habit of delegation. But that,
Exactly
as you
that.
say, takes time. It doesn't happen just in one phone call. Yes. Wow. So you've been on, I think it's an extraordinary journey that you've been on since you started this new business 10 years ago. From such vulnerable beginnings
Hmm.
to being very confident leader of a business about which you are confident is delivering well for lots of people, thousands of people, and it's supporting your staff. Looking back, what would your tips be to someone following in your footsteps?
Oh, so many. Okay, so if I was going to pick three or four, one would be to build your village before you start or as you start. So, and outside of your immediate circle. So look to groups that are going to be able to support you. Get involved in a networking group so that you start to build this lovely support system of people that get it and people that have walked your path before you. So build your village. The second one would be to lift the bonnet. And what I mean by this
Oh,
is to look at your own stuff. What is going to get in your own way? I think for me, I had lots of challenges around, not that anyone else would have known, but around my own mental health. And had I started the business having looked under the bonnet a bit more and maybe got some more support with my own belief systems and my own self-sabotage and things like that, the journey would have been easier and more straightforward. And the third one is I think to get really clear on what matters, on what success looks like,
yes.
but not to everyone else, to you, but to look at that success from a place of what will make you happiest, rather than what you think you ought to be doing. And I think if you're really clear on those things, so your why, what's going on under the bonnet, and building a village, that would be such amazing foundations that certainly would have made lots of the struggles that I faced, well, vastly diminish, I think.
Yes, I'm sure having that support network is really important, isn't it? Rather than just defaulting to one or two people who are not necessarily business savvy,
Yeah.
and then putting them under pressure effectively with your stress, but then not really being able to, give you any support. That
Hmm.
I think I would echo that in huge amounts, and very interested by the looking under the bonnet though. I think a lot of people there would say, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to find out."
It'll bite you on the bum, let me tell you, as you
It
build
will
a
come
business,
back,
because
exactly.
you're
Yes.
so vulnerable to everything you're not good at, and you will either find yourself out or others will find that out for
Yes.
you. And if you're not rock solid in who you are and why you do what you do and how you do it, and if you haven't built the resilience through self-awareness that you need, it will come up. It's why you see, CEOs behaving so badly, or people going bust because of mismanagement of money, or people not being able to retain teams. It's all because of our our externalized behavior that comes from internal thought processes and belief systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think that's incredibly insightful and a really extraordinary note to end this brilliant interview on. I could go on for longer, but we're kind of constrained to the time. But Lucy, thank you. That's been so
Thanks,
insightful,
Colin.
really interesting.
Lovely to talk to you today.
Brilliant. Thank you.